right, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you're tuning in from. This is Aman, Merchant here. We are back this week again with Epiq Thursdays with Aman, and our 21st episode this Thursday. We have a special guest all the way from Toronto in Canada. Glad to have Victor Mifsud in the house. A quick bit of background on Victor coming in, but again, for those of you tuning in for the first time, Epiq Thursdays is our 30-minute geek out slot every Thursday where I kind of interview the movers and shakers in health optimization, biohacking, longevity, and wellness from all over the world. We've had people from the West Coast in the US, in the Bay Area. We've had people all the way down under in Australia, and of course here in Dubai, where I'm kind of sort of stewing this from. Victor is a special guest. He goes by the label of the blind biohacker, and we'll get into that in a minute as to why he kind of calls him that. But a bit of introduction on Victor. He is a citizen scientist. He's a biohacker, of course. He's a natural vision educator. He's also a documentary filmmaker. He has recently completed a very personal feature-length documentary called My Neuroplastic Adventure. His journeys have taken him from the cutting edge of neuroscience to the most ancient forms of tribal healing. So today, I want us to kind of get started by having Victor explain to us, why does he kind of be called as the blind biohacker? So Victor, again, welcome. Thank you for being with us here this morning, your time. But let's get into it. Tell us a bit more about, why the blind biohacker.
Okay, thanks for having me. The name blind biohacker I kind of gave to myself about 4+ years ago. I had been into biohacking 10 years ago, even before it was biohacking. And at the age of 9, it's kind of where it all started. I was diagnosed with a condition called retinitis pigmentosa. And basically it's a vision illness or disease, whichever you want to call it, supposedly genetic. Basically, it's supposed to leave me blind as I get older. And the symptoms of retinitis pigmentosa are severe tunnel vision and night blindness. So I don't see very well at night, and I spent most of my life looking through a tunnel. And as I got older, things developed, things worsened a lot. Nothing could be done about it. I was able to get my driver's license at 16, and then at 21, I lost my license due to my vision loss. So things were getting a lot worse. That loss of my driver's license was very devastating to my personal life and independence. So I didn't take it very well. It set me off into years of depression, anxiety, my life really not going as expected. And fast forward 10 years after that to where I was around 30. Again, life wasn't really going as expected, and I kind of hit a really, really, really low point, and eventually came into some books about neuroplasticity, about the true origins of attention deficit disorder. That was a book by Dr. Gabor Maté, and the other book I mentioned before was a book by Dr. Doidge, writing about neuroplasticity, the brain's way of healing, and the brain that changes itself. And I was reading these stories about how the brain can change. I was diagnosed with severe learning disabilities as well. And I thought I was just stuck the way I was, stupid for life. And these books really taught me that the brain is plastic in the sense that it can change for the better if given the right stimulus and environment. So I thought, oh, wow, these stories sound like me, and felt like I was really stuck in a lot of aspects. So I thought, wow, if I can do some of these exercises or do some of these brain training things, I can really change myself, change my personality as well, because a big part of our personality comes from programmed by our brain. And then I came across this other book as well called Take Off Your Glasses and See by Dr. Jacob Lieberman. And basically it talks a lot about how the eyes can change as well. The eyes can heal, because a lot of us think that, we're born with, we need glasses, and the eyes can't reverse out of the use of glasses. Things get worse, but we actually see with the brain, not with the eye. So if the brain can change, the eye can change too. Again, if given the right stimulus and environment. It's very difficult to get well in the same environment you got sick in. So that's kind of where it all started for me. And there was a lot of things bothering me from a mental health perspective and from a health perspective, because I was always tired, low mood, low energy, and mental health issues. So all these things seemed stuck and very hard to change because of the Western model. It's like, oh, you're depressed, take antidepressants. If your eyes are bad, just wear these glasses. Everything's just a Band-Aid solution. And the body is really, really intelligent, and it can heal. So if we give it the right environment, there's a lot of magic that can happen. So that's a bit how I became the blind biohacker.
It's a wonderful, I guess, example of, I guess, the grit and resilience that humanity can adopt to kind of go places, right? So you did a bunch of things. As you said, you decided to, I guess, take the steering wheel back in your own hand. No pun intended, with no driving license. But the whole idea of, I'm not going to let myself become a victim of my circumstances, and kind of, take things back in control. So in the world of biohacking, as you said, you started 10 years ago, before, I guess, it got labeled by someone in the dictionary as biohacking. So from your experience, what practices have you kind of adopted and adapted in your life that have stayed with you? And of course, we add things as we learn more about these things, but what has served you well and allowed you kind of stay in that state of, optimal performance, being focused, being driven, being motivated every day, regardless of what the world throws at you?
Well, basically, the big thing that I learned in terms of the key to optimal health, and I mean mental health and physical health, has been my connection to nature. We live such disconnected lives, living indoors all the time, staring at artificial light, artificial screens. And it was really until I, woke up first thing in the morning, don't look at my phone, just head straight outside, get grounded, barefoot, and watch the morning sunrise. There's a lot of science showing the power of circadian biology, circadian balance, from just getting outside first thing in the morning and staring at the morning sun. This sets your clock, and it was really that till I started to get connected. And also grounding is very important too, because we live in such a EMF toxic environment with Wi-Fi routers everywhere, cell towers, smart meters, cell phones beside the bed at night, in our pockets, which are all bad news. The body's an electrical system, and it needs to be grounded. If it's wintertime and it's too cold out, you have your shoes on all the time, you're not going outside and getting grounded. The body actually has this discharge through the feet. It's the same principle as us hugging a tree, because the tree's grounded and our hand makes connection with it, thus grounding ourselves, dispersing these harmful charges from these toxic systems. And not to mention, we absorb the positive Schumann resonance from the earth, which is very real. And our ancestors, again, have been doing this for thousands and thousands of years. So that's one of the biggest simple things anyone can do.
Yeah. So when you look at this idea of, as you said, getting ourselves grounded and focused, because we are so electromagnetically surrounded by all these devices and other sort of waves. Where do you feel the connection happens with you? As you speak about the idea of inner and outer self, right? So obviously this is the outer world. It's throwing stimulus at some level. Either you choose to collect it or you choose to ignore it. But help me understand, because I loved your comment in one of the other presentations where you spoke about, how do we kind of make sure that inner side, that sense of calmness and, mental connecting to that inner self is so important, because that helps us sort of set ourselves free, regardless of whether, even if we have glasses and we don't see, kind of thing. So help me understand that inner side, that inner work that you has become very dominant in your thinking as well.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And that's a big part of it. I mean, everyone in the human experience have some sort of trauma in the system, whether it was implanted in childhood through parents, teachers, or even ancestral trauma. So basically, the human system, if this trauma doesn't have a chance to get this energetic release, it stays in the system and can manifest into, ADD, autoimmune issues, depression, anxiety, you name it. This is really based on this on the work of Dr. Gabor Maté. Writes a lot about this. Very interesting fellow. So the Western approach really didn't have ways to alleviate trauma in the system. Western approaches, oh, take this antidepressant. Most people who take antidepressants feel like numb, flat, emotionless. So these feelings, emotion is an energy in motion. So if these emotions are trapped, they can lead to all sorts of issues. So, meditation is one of the oldest forms of helping alleviate trauma through kind of calming the mind. And there is other, we all need help as a species. So, there's great forms of therapy, like somatic therapy. There is psychotherapy, analytic therapy. And now what helped me a lot, because I had a big buildup of this, was psychedelic therapy. Is now there's a lot of science showing the power of psychedelic therapy, how they can really access stuck, hidden emotions in the system. And for me, it had been built up for so long that I did turn to psychedelic medicines. They were guided by practitioners and shamans who really helped me access these trapped emotions. And there's a very freeing element of when you finally can let these things go. I often quote this Carl Jung saying, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you'll call it fate. So all these traumas end up staying in the unconscious realm, which you can't really see them. We can't see our emotions, but we know that they're there. So it's really all about seeing the invisible, or gaining this awareness to the invisible, what's inside of us and what's outside of us. So it's very important to acknowledge and access stuck emotions by, any means possible.
So, um, as part of the work that you did, you've, saw the need to, I guess, also, do this documentary. I mean, what was the genesis of that? Because that obviously is a huge undertaking for someone who may not have been, I guess, who has started off as a filmmaker. What got you started there, and, the driver behind that?
Well, I really wanted to break the stigma of what blind people can do. That's one thing. The idea of a blind filmmaker seems a bit strange and funny, but the way my vision is, I see everything in this tunnel. So my vision actually allowed me to be a little better at being a filmmaker, because everything I see isn't usually like a fixed frame. So I had a preternatural vision effect to see things. And my life unfolded. I've always loved film. I've always loved documentary, and I knew, through my healing journey, I met a lot of, interesting, amazing people. Dr. Norman Doidge, Dr. Gabor Maté, Barbara Aerosmith, tons of people that appear in my film. And I just needed to tell my story of what I went through as a roadmap of being in such a strange, unusual situation, that the body and mind can heal if you give it the right environment. And I wanted to share and be as open and vulnerable as possible, sharing, the deepest parts of myself, saying like, I went through a really, really, really hard time banging my head against the wall, not understanding what was going on with me. And from an emotional perspective, from a life perspective. And I just felt it was a story that I needed to tell. And, like the information that I read in these books, I felt like it was my part to share what I learned, to pass on the torch, and for other people to see this film and say, hey, give them ideas to like, oh wow, if he can change himself, then I can do it too.
So when you, I guess, look at the entire spectrum of vision optimization, 'cause I think you've got a summit coming as well, and I'm happy to talk about that shortly. But what are the key elements of when you think of biohacking vision, for example, or vision optimization? What strategies are there that have served you, but could also serve a lot of other people who may be experiencing difficulties either with their vision or should be doing to keep their vision strong?
That's a great question. So a couple of things. Light is a huge factor in the way our eyes see, and that's natural light. It needs a lot of natural light. So if we're always missing sunrise and indoors under these bright, unbalanced, untimed spectrums of light, it's too powerful for the eyes and can damage the eyes. It can disrupt the length of the eyeball. It can ruin the lens. It can ruin the cornea, making the vision worse. Trauma also plays a big role in vision, because if the body was traumatized by something and it didn't want to see the trauma, it can manifest in actually not seeing the trauma by blurring out at specific distances. So if you can alleviate the trauma, you can tell the eyes to see that it's okay to see it again. And the other thing that happens, this is a little eyeball here in my hand, not a real one, but there's a lot of tension that we keep around the muscles of the eye. A lot of the times you can't feel that tension in the eye. Just in the same way that, when you have jaw tension and, a few hours go by, you don't realize that, oh, wow, I've been clenching my jaw and I don't realize that. The same thing happens very subtle with the eyes. So what ends up happening is we unintentionally squeeze with the muscles of the eye. Like, so the eye is a ball and it's just a natural shape. It's a round shape. It's born round. The only thing that usually makes it not round, and the muscles not being round, cause the eyeball to kind of elongate in the middle because I'm squishing it down this way. So this muscle tension changes the shape of the eye and thus changes the refraction. So the lenses you end up wearing will correct the compensation that your muscles have been squeezing for this whole time. So if you learn how to relax the eye, and there's a muscle relaxant technique. These are blue blocking glasses, by the way, not lens glasses. There's a technique that you can do called palming the eyes. You can look it up. You could just lightly, gently putting the palms of your eyes on the eye bone, slightly pushing in, holding the eyes, easing the tension. And this is a daily exercise that everyone can do for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, essentially relaxing the eyes. And then you'll kind of gain a sense of how tense the eyes were and learn to relax the eyes. And once the eyes learn how to relax, they can change. But if you're wearing glasses already, the eyes you need to sort of change the glasses you're wearing so the eyes can in turn relax. Because if you keep going back to those pair of glasses, the eyes are going to stay set to that prescription. So you essentially will need to slowly reduce the prescription, either work with a behavioral optometrist or a holistic optometrist to get you to either reduce the astigmatism compensation in the eye or reduce the diopters. So, and there's a great book called Take Off Your Glasses and See that I recommend. It kind of gives a holistic approach to wearing glasses. And I say this a lot, we don't need our glasses as much as we think we do. And once you kind of gain this mind and power that you don't need them, your eyes can slowly actually return back to normal. You just need to give your eyes a break. So that's basically what spawned me starting this Vision Optimization Summit, because there's so many different factors that affect the eye and that can damage the eye and empower us to heal the eyes. So the Vision Optimization Summit is 9 speakers talking about how peptides can affect the eye with Dr. Seeds, how trauma affects the eye with Dr. Jacob Lieberman, how color light therapy can heal the eyes. So many subjects, even psychedelics, how the power of psychedelics can assist into changing the eyesight. So you can register at visionoptimizationsummit.com if you're interested. And it's really one of the world's best kept secrets that the eyes can heal. But it takes a bit of an overhead view to sort of see the bigger picture on how it's possible and break the stigma that, the eyes can heal if given the right environment. It might not be as easy as, breaking the arm, putting a cast on, and then heals. It's a little more, it can be a little more.
A system, like a
Yes.
system.
Yes, because the eyes are very, very dense in mitochondria. So they use up a lot of mitochondria. So there's all these factors need to be in this Goldilocks environment for it in order to take place. Like reversing out of glasses is actually pretty easy to do, but then you're getting into more complex vision issues like my vision issue, retinitis pigmentosa, Stargardt's disease, glaucoma, cataracts. Those can be a little more complicated, so it needs more like of an environment to make this change, emotional, inner world, outer world environments. So
Okay. So for someone, let's say now, obviously there's a huge percentage of the world's population that are having either, short-sightedness or long-sightedness. So in terms of a sort of strategy or a starting point, apart from kind of giving, the right health conditions for keeping the health of the eye strong, the palming the eye exercise that you mentioned, or giving it the right nourishment, eating healthy, sleeping well, what you'd kind of see to be the basic foundations for, good health. What could someone perhaps look at doing, every day to keep the muscles strong, the eyes strong as well? Because you get, as you said, you get used to using a certain prescription, and when you take the glasses off, there's initially this blurring, but sometimes you have to sustain that discomfort so that at least your eyes kind of start adapting. So what would you recommend for someone who is having a sort of a certain number, let's call it a prescription for their short-term myopia perhaps, that could probably be addressed through some sort of techniques or habits and practices?
well, the main thing that I would suggest, and the main factor getting into the way of a lot of us seeing is stress. Seeing should not be a forced act. It should happen in the most relaxed state. So if you can harness or raise an awareness on how to reduce the strain in the eye, and like I said, the palming technique is very powerful. That is a big one. Either work with a holistic optometrist to slowly reduce the glasses prescription to wean yourself off. Even maybe try cold turkey. I mean, if you're not driving a car or anything, I'm not recommending, driving a car with no glasses if you really, really need to see. But a lot of times we don't need to see everything in focus all the time. And the other thing that I haven't talked about is red light therapy. Red light therapy is a powerful adjunct to help reduce inflammation, to help give the eye the mitochondrial power to heal itself. So, whether you use a red light therapy device uh, in the eye, not too long, not too close. I mean, 30 seconds a day can be very beneficial at a certain length from the red light therapy device. Protecting your circadian rhythm, like I mentioned before, watching the morning sunrise is actually very beneficial for the eyesight because it's actually 42% infrared anyway. I'd obviously recommend looking at sunrise without glasses to not block, and with no windows, again, to get the actual light in the eye. So these are all really powerful factors. And then you can get into things like peptides and things like that. But these are the basics that stem from a disconnection to nature, that's been built up for over a long time, living an indoor existence, and just in the school system, for example, us being in school all the time early in the morning under these fluorescent crappy lights was probably very damaging. The other thing that's very damaging to us in school, we're reading these books that are at, so close to our face, and the chalkboard so close to us, but the body and the eyes need breaks every 5, 10, 20 minutes of looking at things very far away. So it gives this practice and exercise to focus the eye and lens at things at a very far distance. So if you're always looking close, the body's like, what the hell do I need to look far for? Because everything's close. So, you multiply that by eight years at school, every day indoors. Of course, it's like this natural disconnection. So the eye needs exercise. The eye needs to really relax.
So I think you bring up an interesting point, right? That people get so used to living in that environment or operating that environment, that it ends up affecting something that shows up over time. And, whether it's a weakened eyesight or even sort of the ability to focus. What I'm intrigued to understand is that, as you've worked with your diagnosis and you kind of, lived a life that you're now very happy and content with, you spoke at some point of having, peripheral vision using your hearing skill, because that allowed you to kind of pick up elements that perhaps were not being, caught up in your sort of frame of vision. Has that been sort of your ability to kind of make sure that you are getting more, I guess, field information, if I can use that, to the extent it's possible, and there's not a lot of other sort of noise blocking things out? Has that been useful for you as well? And how does that, for someone who even has vision, because, I think it's an interesting part that we as humans end up talking more and listening less, regardless of the fact that we've got those 2 ears and just a mouth. So maybe in your case, that's helped you use that to your advantage more so than the others.
Well, to be honest with you, I didn't do that intentionally. What took place there after years of dealing with this vision loss is neuroplasticity. So the brain ends up seeing that there's a deficiency in one area in the eyes, in my peripheral vision. So then my ears end up acting like some type of sonar to fill in this. My ears are really great, and they act like my peripheral. I can hear things. Like, for example, if I walk at night and I use headphones or earbuds at night, I feel like I'm a lot blinder. So I need my ears to know that there's a car coming this way, or if I'm going to cross the road. Like, I don't need to look when I'm crossing the road, so I can hear if a car's coming or a bike's coming or whatever. So, like I said, that's just how neuroplasticity works in action. So my ears basically remapped where my eyes saw.
Got it. Yeah. So Victor, we've spent a splendid and generous 30 minutes with you. Thank you very much. I'd love to understand, as a sort of set of closing remarks, couple of things. One, if you've spoken of a few habits and practices that you'd recommend, like, whether it's connecting with nature, circadian rhythms, giving the right elements of exercise, is there anything else you would suggest people, try out to do and give their eyes a bit of a break, so to say, and give it the necessary energy it needs to perform at its best? And finally, is there sort of a challenge we ask every guest that comes on our show that you could set our audience that would help them get into one or more of those rhythms?
Okay, so I'll start with the challenge. The challenge is, first thing in the morning, don't look at your phone. If you need to look at your phone, I don't want to disrupt the challenge, but if you need to look at your phone, make sure your phone has, I don't know if you can see the color of my phone. It's like this red, strong red color. Don't look at it when it's bright or blue. Kill all blue light. Wear blue blockers in the morning. These are a yellow tint. I have a darker orange red, but that's
like
them.
these ones, probably one, yeah. So we can do these. Yeah.
Try to set your circadian clock. I would say the challenge is, don't look at your phone. Get outside first thing in the morning. Even if it's gray, just at least spend a minimum of 5 minutes outside barefoot if you can. That's it. to set your circadian clock. The longer, the better. And the same thing at night. Don't stare at the blue light at night. Wind down. If you need to change the bulbs in your house to red. So that's the challenge. Is just basically for 2 weeks. First, wake up first thing in the morning and get outside. Don't look at your phone.
All right.
Set your circadian balance. There's a lot of great science from Dr. Andrew Huberman talking a lot about circadian rhythm, circadian biology. There's another great book called The Circadian Code by Sachin Panda. Amazing book. And what was the other thing you asked me in regards to
some habits and protocols they can do to kind of just make sure that they're keeping their eyes in their best possible condition?
Red light therapy for the eyes. I don't know if you guys use red light therapy devices. If you can get a decent red light therapy device. I like Red Light Rising. I like EMR Tech, Electromagnetic Revolution. Those are great lights. Dose the eyes with some red light therapy. Do try a minimum of 30 seconds up close. Get that
with eyes open.
I mean the eye. Your eyelids are so thin. You don't need to open them. Just keep them closed and kind of like swing your head back and forth like this, left to right, to kind of get, all aspects of the eye just bathed with the red light and the infrared light. So.
Got it. All right. Well, we'll look into that. Again, Victor, thanks very much for joining us this morning, all the way from Toronto. I think hopefully it's getting a bit more later on in the morning in your day there. And that the temperature goes above -3. When we started, probably got -2 now, -1 as the day wears on. But wonderful to have you here, and thank you everyone who's been watching now or will watch this later. Look forward to seeing you next week at our next Epiq Thursday session. Until then, have a good rest of your day and a great week ahead. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you for having me.
Bye.
Bye-bye.